All right, welcome to the next episode of Voice AI podcast, where we discuss the future of voice AI. Today, I'm super excited to host Rebecca Greene, who is the co-founder and CTO of Regal AI. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
So, very briefly about Regal AI. So, Regal AI is a New York-based company founded in 2020 that offers AI-powered contact center solutions. It combines autonomous AI agents with human agents to deliver personalized, multi-channel customer interactions across voice, SMS, email, chat, and video. The platform leverages real-time customer data to tailor engagements, aiming to enhance sales, support, and retention while reducing operational costs. In October 24, Regal raised 40 million in funding to expand its AI phone agents, bringing its total funding to over 80 million. How was that? Was it like, should you
Pretty
use
spot
that
on.
as a boilerplate?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, ChatGPT is doing great generating, but yeah, sometimes it goes a bit off. But look, it's really exciting to have this episode with you. Like, I think you guys are super innovative, and you're driving the industry forward with, especially with the voice AI agents, right? Rebecca, can you tell us like what are the use cases that the technology works very well today? Maybe it's like some use cases where it doesn't work. There is not there yet. We know that it's not always great, the voice AI, but also yeah, like if you can share with us what works, what doesn't, I think that's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So we build AI agents for the contact center. And like you said, we primarily focus on voice agents and the kind of use cases where it works really well. So we focus on industries where a conversation is not just seen as a cost, but it's also seen as creating value for the business and for the customer. And so that tends to be higher consideration industries where there's a complex decision to be made or more personalization needed in that decision. So, for example, that might be home services, healthcare, insurance, education. It's not to say we don't do retail interactions as well, but that's kind of a little bit less interesting, candidly, because it's more of a cost center in that case as opposed to value creation. And we like it when it's kind of both. And the kinds of use cases that leaves for us. So, primarily, we do a lot of lead qualification calls, like a customer expressed some interest on your website for home insurance or something like that. But you can't talk to every lead necessarily in a cost-effective way, or maybe now you can with voice agents. So you might want to first qualify them before they then go speak to a licensed insurance agent who's really expensive, right? So that's a key example. Payments collections, it's kind of like an uncomfortable call for humans to do. And it's a great use
Yeah,
case for AI agents because of that. They have no shame, I guess, but they're also
yeah,
very compassionate and subtly pushy. Appointment scheduling is another great use case. Really annoying kind of conversation for a human to have to do. You kind of question like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't need to be a human to do appointment scheduling. A lot of back and forth and calendar checking. And then I'd say inbound customer support is also a really big use case for us. So, and I know that can be really broad because a customer can call in for any given reason. But the way I think about it is certainly it's replacing what an IVR might be doing today, where it's like a menu where it's like press one for this, press two for this. And it's a really frustrating experience for a customer where they have to hear hold music and be really rigid. And instead, you can replace that with an AI voice agent who just understands your natural language and what you're trying to accomplish and routes you to the right place, or can start to actually handle many of the simpler interactions. So those tend to be the most common use cases we're seeing today. I
yeah.
can
No,
also tell you
no,
what's not useful.
oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah, so I think we've certainly had customers try to push the limits of what AI agents can do today, which is great because that's where we learn the most and understand where the technology needs to go next. So, I'm not going to say anything that's rocket science, but certainly much, much longer conversations. I think the upper limits of what our AI agents are doing really well today is probably 15 to 20-minute conversations today. And I think, if a customer comes to me and says like, hey, these conversations are really 45 minutes. They tend to be hyper conversational. There's a lot of selling and like getting to know the customer. I might not say that that's the first use case for an AI agent. So longer conversations. I also think conversations that are more sensitive in nature, where the value of why I'm calling is to talk to a human. Like that's a key piece of it. Like I want to complain about something very specific, and like having a machine hear that, it doesn't really feel like I'm fully venting. So it might be like another use case where it's not the first place that I would do it. And then from a technical perspective, I would say, we've had a lot of success with recently with doing warm transfers or complicated conversations where an AI agent has to have a conversation, then they need to put the customer on hold, have a brief conversation with a human agent where they kind of summarize, answer some questions so the human agent is prepared, and then they connect them. But where I don't think the AI agent would perform very well yet is if there were multiple parties in the same conversation at once and it had to really disambiguate well, who's speaking now and what's the context of that. And I think that's where I would pump the brakes and say we can run some experiments, but I'm not sure I would put it in production yet.
Cool. No, I think these are really great use cases. I would like to deep dive into them, but before we do that, can you tell us, like from technology perspective, what is the biggest challenge from the technology stack perspective, right? Would it be like, I don't know, ASR maybe for different sort of edge cases, or you feel very comfortable already with the tech stack, and it's more like, I don't know, workflow management? Like what are the challenges, tech challenges that you guys are facing? Because I know everyone is facing such challenges, but what would be your priority, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I definitely think I would say around the margin, call it like 1% of calls, 2% of calls. We definitely see technical challenges in the part of the stack that you're talking about, whether that's in the TTS provider or in the transcription or in the LLM itself, whether it's latency or, the provider goes down and we have to fall back to a solution, or the transcription doesn't quite pick up someone's name right. And I think customers do pay attention to that. But it has been like very single, like small single digit percentages. And I think it's just something you want to get right, because when you hear those calls, they feel a little icky and a human wouldn't have done those things. But that's by and large not holding up production use cases or scaling those types of challenges. And we've seen such improvement in latency and transcription and all those things in the year and a half that we've been building AI agents, that's the kind of thing that it's more about how I manage customer expectations, about what it's good at, what it's not good at, what percent of the time it's not good at that thing, so they don't over index on it, and really anchor them towards their business metrics, as opposed to those occasional qualitative glitches. And we've built certainly products. We're a multi provider product, so like we'll have 11 labs and a bunch of other providers in the voices. We'll have different transcription providers and LLMs for the purpose of each of them is doing something new and exciting and different, and they're better at certain things, and for being able to fall back if something goes down. So we've built tech to handle those scenarios, but that's not really where I think the challenges are. I think the challenges that we see, they're technical, but I would call them more product challenges, actually. I think the way that we think about the product is there's building AI agents, there's testing AI agents, monitoring AI agent or deploying AI agents, monitoring, and then improving. And I think there are still kind of first order problems or product problems in each of those different areas. And then I think in improve, that's where like all the exciting future stuff lives. But for example, in the build scenario, I still think we're trying to figure out with our customers, like what is the best way to build the most effective agents for each use case and how to start them off from scratch on that path. And so is it just a prompt-based way of building, which is really simple, but maybe less powerful and less reliable and like doesn't scale as well? Or is it a workflow-driven way of building, which is, super tedious and a bit like less magical in some ways in terms of the quality of the conversation when it's so rigid and moving on. So I still think that build interface is an open question that we have multiple approaches to and are still trying to figure out. And I see a lot of other platforms trying to figure that out. I think similarly in the test phase, like testing is very, very tedious when you launch or even pre-launch of an agent, and then you want to make changes to the prompt or the workflow and have the confidence that you didn't create some new issue. We do simulation testing around that, but that's certainly imperfect. And what I find specifically is imperfect about it is there's like the way you simulate things in a lab, and then the way you simulate things like that are grounded in reality, and the way the human calls actually go. And we learn things like when we were testing in our simulations, they would always answer the agent's question directly with a very succinct response. And then when you put it in production, in this one use case we had, which was like kind of an older population, like they would actually be like really verbose and tell their whole life story and
Yeah.
like not exactly address the agent's perspective. And it's like, okay, our simulation testing didn't really like take that into account. And so we're working on the product challenge. It is a technical challenge too, but of how do you, and we have the benefit of human conversations in our application as well, right? That human agents have had, but how do you take all of those historic transcripts and upload it so that you can create simulations that are more grounded in reality? Those are two that come to mind.
Yeah, no, actually, it's so great to hear that the tech stack is already like reliable enough. That is not the primary issue because like a year ago that was not the case, right? It's
Oh,
just
for sure.
the
A year ago,
space
I would have
is
been
just
complaining
yeah,
about, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And I find it like fascinating that pretty much like every company has this problem with AI agents is the reliability of it, right? So like how do you and there is I think there is a concept of reliability engineering, like a new concept in engineering that comes along now. How do you actually exactly how do you simulate uh, scenarios? How do you QA these scenarios? How do you give like transparency? How do you monitor, bring observability, and all of that? So because like as a customer who wants to deploy these systems, how do you convince them that like these agents are not gonna go off, you know, to side, you know, and say things you don't want them to say? But so like I think like you mentioned some of this right as the challenges, but it seems like you guys have built something like really cool. Um,
Yeah, but I would say to that last point you just made that I think there was so much about hallucination early on that customers have
yeah.
started to over-index on
Mm,
like really tightening up what an AI agent is able to do and really being it's super in control to avoid that problem. And like you said, hyper monitoring and all of that, we've found that it kind of creates the opposite problem where they start from a script and then they like kind of force fit the agent to do exactly that thing. And then they go live so that they can be sure that it doesn't go off the rails and they set a bunch of guardrails. And what they find is that when we start monitoring performance on their business metrics, like it completely underperforms their human agents, right? That are already doing these calls. And then you have this whole backtracking or back solving exercise of like reverse engineering. Well, wait, like the script, the AI agent is actually doing the script every time, right? And they're like, well, yeah, but your human agents are going off script. In fact, your best human agents are almost always going off script. So we need to go listen to all your human agent calls who perform the best and figure out like the degrees of freedom that you're going to allow your AI agent to do so that it can actually have a really good high quality conversation and not be too rigid. And we see that all the time. And now we know enough to like limit that problem early on and like encourage them to let's listen to your best agent calls at the same time that we're looking at your
yeah,
script and really design the agent around the best agent, not around the script as it's written.
right. And like one question I keep wondering about when I think about AI agents is like these customers that you deploy your product at, right? What kind of um, uh, like support folks or like maintenance folks do they have? What kind of skills do you require them to have to be able to manage this very complicated products, right? That are not very deterministic in their nature, right?
Yeah.
Is it like do they need to like play with the prompts? Do they need to code? Probably not, not the later one, but probably with prompts,
Yeah.
yes. Like
So
can you describe that person and their skills?
yeah. So I don't know that we have our answer to this right now. I
Yeah,
don't know that it's our long-term answer, but we've had a similar observation to you. So it is no code, right? Like you
yeah,
can build custom actions or like custom functions that do have code, but we also have teams here who can do that for you once we understand what your use case is. So it could be iterating a prompt, it could be changing a workflow. And in contact centers, which we've been building, like there are those similar kinds of workflow tools for like orchestrating outbound calls or IVRs or things like that. So that's
Right,
a bit more
right.
familiar, but prompting is not familiar. As much as people are starting to use ChatGPT in their personal lives, the amount of prompting to get what you want to get done here in an AI agent is very different. So our solution, candidly, has been we do it with them. Like we have forward deployed engineers who help them iterate the prompt and deploy these agents and help them test. And we try to show them at the same time that we're doing it so that they're learning. And at the same time, we're also racing to make the product as easy as possible, like improving the usability of it, automatically suggesting things that'll make the prompt more effective. Or maybe you
Like
don't have to
having a
start from a blank.
co-pilot, I guess, right?
Yeah, having a copilot, or maybe you don't start from a blank page to begin with. You describe your situation or you upload your 3 best agent calls and it builds the prompt as a starting point for you, solving the cold start. So we're constantly thinking about faster ways of doing that. And our internal team is the first users of those, right? And then they start to vet it and then we make it self-serve to customers. But like right now, if I just turn the product over to our customers, even though they're enterprise customers and they're smart and they're on the technical-ish side of contact center leaders or even their product leaders, yeah, I don't think it would go as well. Like, I don't think they would build as companies fast enough. And I think they would see how tedious it is. They might appreciate the trade-offs a little bit more and not try to stuff every edge case into the AI agent if they had to build it. But I don't think they would be as successful, which is why we've gone with the forward deployed engineer model to start.
Very, very cool. And so how long does it take to get them running? Like, is it like 2 weeks up and running? Is it like a month? Is it
Good
more
question.
like, yeah,
Just to build an AI agent, there's no one answer to this, right? Like
yeah,
what we try to do is we try to get them a V1 agent together with them within a week, right? Because
nice.
you want the
Okay,
magic, right? The
yeah,
cool thing about AI agents is like literally you could just write a very simple prompt and all of a sudden be like having this conversation. And so we want
yeah.
them to have that magical moment as quickly as possible. And then we start over the next week or two filling in the gaps of, okay, where does it need to send data to? Where does it need to get data from? Um, or let's think about how all the edge cases or not even edge cases, like what is the knowledge or common FAQs that gets asked that we need to load up the AI agent with. So we basically flesh it out and take them through what is like a product launch effectively, right? And our forward deployed engineers have product backgrounds for a reason. So they basically take them through that launch process until they're ready. And assuming the telephony piece, like the integration piece on its own, is not super complex in terms of like who their current telephony provider is and how they want to deploy this, I would say within like 3 weeks, we have like a production ready agent for them to go live with. And we try to start customers, we focus them on the biggest, most impactful use cases, but we start them at a very low percent of it so that it de-risks it for them.
Oh,
But at
okay.
least once we see it working, they can easily dial up. So then all the work they've already done is kind of like there and they start getting the volume benefits
Oh,
as they go.
nice. Like, so let's deploy with 5%. You will see how it is, and then let's go. I think this is fascinating. Rebecca, can you? I think this is also a great segue to the future, right? So can you uh, imagine, in 5 years or like maybe 3 years? Five years is maybe too much. But how is that experience going to be? I think like that part. I mean, technology is going to catch up. Technology is going to get better and better. But I'm really interested in like the deployment part, right? So you go to a customer, right? And our customer comes to you, wants to use your product. So how is going to be that relationship? How is going to be the deployment and management of the voice AI agents, and the scale of them, right? I'm sure you're thinking about it a lot, but I'm just interested from the experience perspective. Like I think it's going to be a magical experience, but I'm like very, very curious to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, so start at the first part. Like in 5 years, I fully expect 90% of interactions to be AI agent led voice interactions. So we're
You mean
very
in
bullish.
the you mean in the world, like 90% in the world?
Yes. Yes, that's our
Oh,
experience
wow.
for
Okay.
contact
That's
center,
very
right?
bullish.
For contact centers, we're very
Okay.
bullish on it. Yes,
All right.
candidly, and I think the only thing that would prevent that from happening is regulation. I don't think it's about
Okay.
the technology, and I don't think it's about customers like market acceptance, whether that's our customers
Yeah.
or the end consumer. I think like unlike outsourcing, which was a little bit more of a race to the bottom on pricing, I truly believe AI agents give you that price advantage, but they also give you actually a better quality experience with infinite knowledge, potentially personalization, multi-language, etc. So that's why I'm so bullish on that curve. I think in terms of, I mean, it's funny. I think in terms of the build or deploy experience, I don't, I, this is an easy thing to say. Like, I think these simple like 1.0 agents will become just like almost out of the box, right? Like, you'll have a template for every, like, what's the best way to have insurance lead qualification call, right? It won't take very much prompting. I think those interactions are going to be so simple and standardized that there's not a ton of way to differentiate really in the way that you do those. And so I think those become very templatized. I think like as you move up, because I'm bullish on moving up to more complex conversations, and longer conversations, I think some of the similar problems in the build phase will exist, but I think it will be about those longer conversations. And I don't, I honestly think it'll be less about the interface, or the problems will be less about the interface for building those agents, and it'll be more about the process by which you improve those agents. And by that, I mean, I think there's like, I don't know the timeline on these things because we're already thinking about them. So maybe it's sooner than the 5-year timeframe. But I think it's about like once you've deployed an AI agent and great, you have like basic monitoring on it. How do you make sure that it continuously improves and is just getting better and better? Like the name of the game right now is just make sure it doesn't say the wrong thing and it does the conversation. And then now
Yeah.
it's like moving towards, okay, now I want it to like be as good as a human. And I think it's going to move beyond that and say, like, well, it should surpass humans. Humans at some point are capped, but AI agents shouldn't be. And so, how does a AI agent just get better and better? And I think some of that is about reinforcement learning, and it will just improve. But I think a lot of the value or advantage is in like personalization, right? Like the right now, when people are thinking about an agent improving, they're thinking about it improving across like the average customer or the average of conversations. Or if they wrote, like if they created an A B test, like they'll say, oh, a male voice won out over a female voice, or an agent who's very succinct won out over an agent who's a bit more conversational. But that's true on the average, but that's not necessarily true for each individual. And so I think what's going to be exciting is in that improve phase of like, how can the AI agent quickly understand like the type of person this customer is based on the way they're reacting or the segment they're part of, and how can it change its style of the way that it conducts the conversation to get them through it. So maybe I'm in a rush and I'm like giving really short responses, so the AI agent goes into like, hey, this is only going to take 2 to 3 minutes, and it just like goes right through it, whereas you're chatting with it and you're pausing and you're whatever, and so it goes into conversational mode, right? I think agents will be able to take a goal, a business goal of what they're trying to achieve, and I think they will be able to adapt to the individual mid conversation to deliver the best potential experience for the customer and business results. So I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really the personalization is very interesting. I mean, another one that I heard that is like I found fascinating is the idea that traditionally the call center, because it's so complex, right? Like finding people, training them, and having the phone infrastructure is just so complex. It has been created and managed as a separate thing outside the product, right? But voice agents, they're so simple that you can bring them to the product and make it part of the product experience actually, and having that whole support in it. I think like that's another important sort of transformation that is gonna sort of be powered by these agents and be part of the product, right? It's very different, right? Very different than how we think about call centers today.
Yeah, my co-founder Alex likes to say he thinks basically every app is just going to have like a voice interface, and you're like instantly speaking to the brand, right? And so like it's not about like dialing the contact center anymore. It's like no, I talk to every brand that I want to talk to at any time.
That's very cool. Yeah. Well, very cool. Thanks so much, Rebecca. I think this again, like I think what you're building is fascinating. You're leading the way of these agents, and it was great having you. Thanks for
Awesome.
your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.